Welcome back to Real Talk, and today we are here with Sarah Myer. And as always, the first question, how do we know you from the industry?
Hi, I'm Sarah Myer. I'm best known, I guess, for my work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures as the illustrator and cover artist currently, and Monstrous, a transracial adoption story, which is my graphic memoir from First Second Books.
Fantastic. Now, I know that you are hard at work, so we can put that down so you can keep working.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead.
Kinda,
Nice. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you the second question, which is, do you believe that a degree in art is necessary to be successful in your industry?
Absolutely not. I think that everybody, first of all, works differently. Everybody learns differently. I did study sequential art for my bachelor's degree and my master's degree. However, that was mainly because I don't feel that I personally put enough work into my portfolio the first time through college studying sequential art. And I felt that it would benefit me as an individual to go back to grad school to study it again in order to enhance my portfolio, as well as some networking skills, which I lacked in my undergrad. And but I generally, I've seen some. I think you and I, Brian, were talking about this just the other day. Sometimes you see artists who are they learn better outside the classroom, and you'll see some artists who are 18 years old and have been drawing for less time than somebody who's a seasoned industry veteran, but their skill set is incredible.
Right.
Their ability is incredible, and they've done it all really through just like learning from Tumblr tutorials and YouTube videos, and that's perfectly valid.
Right.
So I absolutely, it really depends on the individual. I don't think it's necessary to have a degree. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned portfolio.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the thing that you would need in your portfolio so that you would stand out?
Oh man, I guess it depends on what you're interested in doing. So, in theory, are we talking about maybe somebody who just wants to be a monthly, like,
Yes.
like to be like a main illustrator of
Yeah.
a book? I would just say if it's an IP, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, definitely make sure that you demonstrate that you can draw on model. Wear your heart on your sleeve. I always tell people, I think that, if you don't think that you have to draw, don't try too much to draw things that you feel you have to draw. Because I think that when your passion is in what you're drawing, it does show, and you put more effort into it. So show that you can draw on model. Definitely show a good grasp of anatomy. And depending on again what you're interested in doing, you might need to showcase flexibility, versatility in your style or medium. If you aren't quite set on a specific function in a publisher, But if you want to be, for example, a colorist, then you gotta do nothing but really stellar colors and make sure that you have that. I fell into coloring as kind of by accident. I'd only ever colored my own stuff. But I would say, if somebody wants to be a colorist, it might be good to just make sure that you are showcasing that you can tailor the way that you might color one artist's work for one project in one setting, for that. So, for example, you might say, all right, I've got some, maybe I've colored some old school Jack Kirby inks, and I'm just demonstrating that I understand a certain type of style, and I can put a little bit of an affectation on it that shows I understand a vintage look. But then, maybe I'm going to be showcasing, my ability to color a newer artist, like say, Babs Star's art or something, and you might want to show that you can do a totally different style of color.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in your experience, what would you say is your must-have tool of the trade?
Must-have tool of the trade? In
Whatever. If someone would ask you, you can have one thing to do your art, one, and on an island by yourself, if you have one tool, what would it be?
one physical tool.
Or like computer tool, you know, like, oh, I like the computer, I like this software, or I like this. You know, what do you have to have?
Definitely, I just think a really good sketching pencil.
Okay.
Because, in a way, or honestly, well, okay, if I was trapped on a desert island
Yeah.
and I could only have the one tool, that's a hard tie between a really good sketching pencil and the ability to sharpen it.
Okay.
Or
Okay.
a ballpoint pen, because a ballpoint pen, I'd like to make the assertion that the ballpoint pen is the pencil of the pen world.
You know what? I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
Yeah, so you can absolutely sketch with a ballpoint pen. So I guess if I was limited, that would be good.
Okay.
But
All right.
that way you could do either sketching or finishing.
Okay. So I have a lot of students that I try and mentor, and one of the things that I mention is networking and how important it is to get out there and network.
Yes.
In your experience, how important is it to network with fellow artists or industry professionals or anyone for that matter to help further your career?
I would say it's quite important, but it should never be the be-all, end-all goal, because I think that if somebody has the idea, or the set idea, that it's all about who they know and getting in on that, I think that there's the risk that they might neglect other skill areas, skill set. So while I say networking and timing in many ways is very important to getting into the industry, keep in mind, I was doing Artist Alley for 20 plus years or almost 20 plus years by the time I got successful. And I think that in that time, I would say my networking skills were not very good, but it did give me time to build up a lot of self-reliance. Though I certainly don't mean to imply that anything I have now in terms of my recent published success is not because of people helping me out a lot, and I really am grateful for that. But I became a real self-starter in those years that I didn't really network a whole bunch, that I wasn't really known to a lot of people in the industry. I became kind of an entrepreneur, my own penciler, my own inker, my own colorist, my own writer, and those skill sets are things that I think people should try to build up as much as possible outside of networking. But I think that the soft skills are things that are often not talked about enough with the industry, because you do need to be able to work with other artists and other colorists, what have you, if you get a job on a monthly comic. And the networking skills, of course, is all about having conversations, knowing what other people are working on, being able to express to people things that you're interested in potentially working on. I sort of always joke that if I didn't wear my heart on my sleeve in regards to my lifelong love of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I don't really know that things would have lined up for me, because A, I wouldn't have been making all the portfolio pieces, and that led to me ultimately getting the job, and B, I don't think that the people who took notice of my portfolio pieces would have even known that I was that excited about it.
Okay, all right, makes sense.
To give you a very long, rambling answer, but and I always try to tell my students at SCAD, I taught freshmen, I always told them, okay, there are 3 things you gotta have. You gotta be quick, timely, so you have to make your deadlines, and you have to be skilled or good, quote unquote, that's very subjective, but you have to be able to, in other words, hit the mark of the work that they want in regards to quality or scope of what they want.
Yep.
And 3, you have to be nice. You have to be a pleasant person to work with. A person technically can get by on 2 of those 3, but if you have all 3 of them, it will really, really go a long way.
Absolutely. I use that all the time. You got to be at least two. If you can be all three, then, things will be a lot easier for you.
For sure. I think you and I are really similar in our philosophies.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What, in your opinion, what is the best way to obtain a style?
Ooh. In my opinion, what is the best way to obtain a style? Oh man, that's the woe of many young artists, isn't it? Like, and some older artists, I guess. I would say, I don't mean to sound all like zen or like whimsical, but I would say, don't actually try too hard to, quote, find or establish your style. My style, if I had to say I had one, comes from a whole bunch of sources, a whole bunch of things that I love just as a fan, but also as an artist. I love Chuck Jones, but I also love Sailor Moon and 90s anime. I love Evangelion. I would say that Evangelion and classic Renaissance Disney in the late 80s, early 90s is how I learned how to draw hands. But, I'm not going to completely just lift every single thing from the Disney way or the Dynax way of drawing hands. So I try to just think about what is it that I like about certain styles that I enjoy as a fan, but I try to think about it in terms of not trying to just straight up replicate it, just thinking about what is it in that style that ignites my interest. And for Chuck Jones, for example, will I ever really be able to draw facial expressions as amazingly as Chuck Jones? Probably not. But one of the things I love about it is his characters are able to really interact with the camera. Like, they'll give a sly look, and I try to kind of capture that spirit, but not that specific way, So I try to embody the spirit of things that I enjoy as an appreciator of art and comics and cartoons.
Awesome. You are not kidding. We definitely do share a very strong philosophy together.
Yes.
That's awesome. So you mentioned, you were entrepreneurial first.
Yes.
And so my next question is, how important do you think it is when trying to be an independent entrepreneur? How important is it to get credits from one of the bigger companies to, say, help just bolster your awareness, their awareness of you?
Credits? You mean in terms of individual credits on a book? Or?
So like, I'm working on a book, and I'm making my own book. Should I go work for Marvel for a couple issues, or should I focus on working on my own stuff?
I would say, this is a hypothetical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would say definitely go with B, because here's the thing. Marvel or DC or what have you might notice your book if you self-publish it. You'll have something physical already done. You've shown that you can conceive of something and go through every stage needed to produce it. Maybe you can kickstart it,
Yeah.
And if you have that in your portfolio, in your tool belt, so to speak, there's nothing like being able to say, oh, you want to know what I've done? Here you go. This is an example. Here's what I've done on it. And you physically have the thing, or you have the PDF to show somebody. I think that that's going to go a much longer way than saying, well, I've got this idea for a book, but I'm waiting on your doorstep, Marvel or DC. They're going to think, well, what's our motivation for letting you in if we're not quite sure how you're going to carry anything that we'd like you to do potentially to fruition. So I would say, and also there's no shame whatsoever in taking a day job if you need to afford to be able to do and make that self-published thing. I think that a lot of people think they have to be always constantly 100% like doing comics, and if you can get to that point, that is incredible. But somebody who works a day job and draws comics at night, somebody who takes on some smaller freelance projects, they're all artists, they're all working, so there's no shame in any of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The last hard question.
Sure.
What is the one thing that you wish you knew as you got started as an artist? That you like now, with all of your experience,
Right.
what is the one thing you wish you knew when you got started?
Um, hmm. I think how hard it would be to continue when you think that you're not going to get any nibbles. For sure, because I started doing Artist Alley in 2002 as a teenager, and I was selling my art for like really ridiculously low prices. I didn't recognize the value of it, and I had like, binders of like really cheap prints and such. And I think at the time I was just so excited to have made $5 on a print of Sailor Moon drawn in markers, that I was not thinking at all about, is this going to be sustainable for the long haul? What am I going to do when I am not a teenager at an artist alley, and when I, almost 20 years in the future, am worrying about, am I going to have to go back to my government office job? I don't know if I'm going to get this.
Right.
And I think that the realities of it, there were certain things that, I was naive about. To a degree, though, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go back and do it any other way, because I think if I knew too much, though, about the realities of it, I would have probably run away screaming in terror.
That's fair. That's
but yeah,
fair.
I think the day in and day out, the hand pain, the anxiety over how am I going to balance my schedule and make sure that I make this deadline, how am I going to get the pitch for the next graphic novel seen by somebody, I think is the major concern, and that's something that I never could have foreseen that.
Okay.
And I wish that I had known a little bit of that, so I could maybe have saved some money.
Okay. All right. So last thing,
Yeah.
where can we find your work, and is there any contact information you'd like to give?
Yeah. So the best place to find my work right now is on Instagram, because I update that way more regularly, and that is under @SMyer Comics, SMYER Comics. And then I've got my website, Sarah, SARAH. I think you can see it in the frame probably. MYER.net. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Just where can we find you, and how can we contact you? And I think you gave that to us. Awesome.
All in one.
So thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you at the next convention.
Thank you so much.